Welcome back, troops. Let's tab 59. Been trying to do this video this morning. I've had to stop 3 times because the wind is really playing up on the microphone. I've had a lot of problems lately with the wind. I've got a fairly decent microphone, but the wind's playing me up. So I've come into this sheltered area and I'm going to have to tab back round towards the house and maybe finish off in the shelter of the garden or somewhere. So, the advantage of being an island nation, Great Britain that is, the advantage of us being an island nation is it's difficult for someone to invade us. Now, of course, we have been invaded in the past. The Romans rocked up. They had a bit of a go at us. They were here for a while. What do the Romans ever do for us, eh? Brought peace, right? So the Romans had a go for a while. And then the Vikings, and of course we had the Norman conquest. But after that, really, there wasn't much of an invasion. We did, actually, 1797. The French rocked up and they had a go. They actually were the last people really to invade us. The French in 1797. But they got that wrong. So their initial plan was to land round at Bristol and capture that area. Bristol Harbour. Quite a big city, Bristol. They wanted to get in that way. But due to bad weather, you know what the channel's like, we get some unpredictable weather in the UK, that scuppered their plans. And so they went round a bit further round west and landed at Fishguard in Wales. Now, along there by Fishguard was some cannon, and the cannons were actually blank firing, apparently, and they were designed to be fired just to alert the locals that they were being invaded. So obviously it was a big threat to have cannons lined up. So these cannons were fired blank and that alerted people, and the French thought they were under attack. It sort of like unnerved them a bit. Anyway, they managed to land, and they're a bit of an unruly bunch, this French invasion force. They were made up of a lot of prisoners and people like that, very unreliable. There's a local woman at Fishguard, Jemima, I think her name was something like that, become a bit of a heroine. She was in traditional Welsh dress, got the old red kit on, the red dress on or whatever it was, and the old black tall hat like a top hat. She grabbed a pitchfork and a few other Welsh girls dressed similar to her, and they raced down to take on these invaders who thought the redcoats were coming, thought it was British Army. Anyway, it didn't happen. They all got captured and the army rocked up and wiped them out, or captured them, whatever. So that was the last invasion, 1797, by the French. And that was it. Now, of course, World War II comes along, and yes, the Germans captured the Channel Islands, but that's all they got. They didn't get the rest of us. But it wasn't for want of trying, because the Germans, after the fall of Dunkirk, the miracle of Dunkirk, when we mounted Operation Dynamo and rescued the BEF, the British Expeditionary Force, got them back to UK, saved 300,000 soldiers, and some French amongst them, I think. Gets them back to UK, and then Hitler decided that he was going to have a go at us and mount an operation called Operation Sealion. Now, it was, as you know, we had the Battle of Britain. He had to get air superiority to mount the invasion of UK. Couldn't just come across the channel in ships and landing craft, etc. He'd have got annihilated, so he had to dominate the skies, had to get air superiority over the Royal Air Force. Well, that was never going to work, was it? I mean, we had the Spitfires, we had the Hurricanes, and 2 fantastic fighter aircraft. Certainly the Spitfire matched their fighter, this Messerschmitt. So that wasn't going to work. But that was his plan. Now, to put it into context, they planned, the Germans that is, they planned Operation Sealion, the invasion of UK mainland, in 84 days. That's how long it took them to make this plan, because they did have a plan in place. 84 days. In context of that, when the Allies mounted D-Day, June 1944, the invasion of Northern Europe, that took 2 years to plan it. 2 years in the planning. The Germans thought they could plan it in 84 days and execute it after wiping out the Royal Air Force. And it was going to be planned around August, September 1940. Well, that didn't happen. Now, why didn't it happen? Well, it was never going to work because, I mean, obviously the Royal Air Force gave them a bloody nose, so they weren't going to get air superiority. But even if they had, the plan was once they'd got air superiority, they still had to face our home fleet, the Royal Navy. No one messes with the Royal Navy. No one messes with the Royal Navy. That's another bad. If you mess with the Royal Air Force, that ain't going to work. Mess with the Royal Navy, that ain't going to work either. Our home fleet outnumbered the German Navy, the Kriegsmarine. And what happened prior to all this, when the Germans invaded Norway, they lost a lot of their fleet. Obviously, after World War I, they restricted the number of ships they could have, and they hadn't rebuilt the Navy the same as they'd rebuilt the Army and the German Air Force. So their Kriegsmarine, the German Navy, wasn't that strong, and they'd lost a lot in Norway. So they're a bit worried about our home fleet. The German Army, well, we know that was strong. That was quite strong. Now, if they'd have got air superiority, and if they thought they were good enough to take on our home fleet, the Royal Navy, to protect the invasion, how were they going to get the German soldiers across? Well, they'd planned to get about 9 divisions in about 3 waves of troops. And the way they'd done it was there was going to be an airborne drop. They'd planned to do a parachute drop in the Dover area somewhere. Now, there is some flat, if you know Dover, there is some flat areas inland from Dover, but it ain't the best place to parachute into. Not a division of Fallschirmjägers, German paratroopers, not into Dover. It's quite hilly. But they obviously had some earmarks, some DZs in that area, and they're trying to get them. The problem is with that, the German paratroopers never used to parachute with their weapons. They pretty much jumped clean fatigue. They got their weapon on the air, but they didn't carry their weapons system, so they were parachuted separately. So they were going to land in the Dover area without their weapons and then scramble around in the dark, because it would have been a nighttime drop. That's after they'd got through our coastal defences with the aircraft carrying the paratroopers. So that wasn't going to work well either. But the main invasion force in these 3 waves was going to come across the channel. Now, they didn't have dedicated amphibious craft like we did on D-Day later on in 1944. So they sort of cobbled together barges and tugs and anything they could. They got some off the French, they nicked them. They got some of their own, obviously. They got some off the Dutch and the Belgium, etc. And they cobbled together these barges. Now, some of the barges did have their own power and some had to be towed. But even ones with their own power, these barges were built for inland waterways, not for crossing the channel. So they would have to be tugged across, pulled across the channel by tugs. Now, because each barge would have been tugging 2 of these, each tug would have been tugging 2 barges across, they reckoned that it would have taken the invasion force about 30 hours to cross the channel. 30 hours! P&O do it in, 75 minutes? 30 hours to get across the channel. Imagine how rough them troops would have been feeling after bobbing around for 30 hours in the channel. Even these were so vulnerable, these barges, even the wake of other shipping, their own ships moving around as they come across, would have capsized. They reckon they'd have lost about 10% of these barges just crossing the channel. 30 hours rocking up on Dover Beach or all the other landing sites. They'd been thrown up for NATO, wouldn't they? They'd have been all over the place. So that wasn't going to be very good. So when you combine all that together, you can see that it was going to be tough. And the reason it was tough is, obviously, like I say, we had a great Navy, fantastic Air Force, and we've got some reasonable coastal defences. We put mines out and stuff like that. And we'd grown our army as well. Although Dunkirk had just happened, we had slowly increasing the size of our army. So but apart from all that, the main thing that saved us, as I say, was that little strip of water. 21 miles from France to Dover, to UK, the shortest crossing point. That little strip of English Channel, with unpredictable weather and tides, was really going to naff them. And eventually, as we know, Operation Sealion was scrapped because Hitler decided he wanted to go and have a punch-up with Russia, Operation Barbarossa. He wanted to go and have a punch-up with them, and he couldn't take both sides on at the same time. So he looked at it, they all planned it and went, no, actually, that's a waste of time. We ain't going to do that, bad boy. Pack the barges up, let's get out of Dodge. And they sacked it. Thank God. And off he went to Russia. So that's the advantage of being this little island nation. Yes, we're small, we haven't got a lot, but being an island nation has helped us. from being invaded. Of course, it's now 2025, and 7 years ago, 2018, we started to get invaded by small rubber dinghies with 18 to 40-year-old men, fighting age men, on these rubber dinghies coming ashore illegally. And not only can't we stop them, we're helping them. So unlike the Germans, where the Germans had to, cross the channel in these little barges for 30 hours to get across the water, these gadgets coming from France, they get in a rubber dinghy, and they've only got to go halfway, and they get picked up, they get escorted halfway to make sure they're okay by the French, and then once they get into our waters, they cross that line in the middle of the channel, up rocks Border Force, and picks them up, and takes them the rest of the way. So a lot of the little dinghies aren't even doing the full crossing. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, where it's all going to end. So, we've been invaded a few times in the past, but we've resisted a lot because of that little bit of channel. And now, well, the new invasion of UK, we're assisting it. We're actually helping them to arrive. We're helping them by getting them across the channel once they get halfway. But we're also helping them because we're offering them so much. It's a land of milk and honey. These guys, mostly guys, isn't it, on the other side, know they're going to get looked after when they get here. They've heard the stories. People relaying information back. Rock up here, you get picked up halfway. You get, here's a blanket, son. Here's a cup of cocoa. Here's a life jacket. We'll take you the rest of the way. And then when they get here, hand the life jacket in, on a minibus, bosh, straight off to a processing centre or whatever. Next minute you're in a hotel. 3 meals a day, doctor, everything. Anyway, so yes, the invasion of the UK. We've been done a few times. We've thwarted it a few times. But it seems now that it's another invasion. Very sad state of affairs. I don't know where it's all going to end up. Anyway, don't want to get political. That's enough. Just want to talk a little bit about the island nation of Great Britain and how it's been invaded and how we've resisted invasion and what's happening today. So if you're new to my channel and you haven't subscribed, please consider it. I'm not saying do it, I'm saying consider it. Be great if you could, because it'll help the channel grow a little bit more and it helps this all get out. So thanks for listening. Stay safe, everybody. Until the next time, remember, let's tap.